Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Blaster Master 02. In the last part we reached L299 and now we have the Burn Spark. I can't ignore a mutant with control over a huge weapon like that. Who knows what damage it could do? Now that we have Burn Spark, GAIA-SOPHIA can take it on. I know it! Indeed, we got the Burn Spark last time, which I'm putting into a sub-weapon slot at the moment, but I actually recommend you map this to a shortcut button, be it ZL or ZR, because this is a piece of movement utility that actively increases your movement speed, which is nice to have to begin with. But when you use it, you charge forward more or less invincible to all forms of damage, barring, I think, certain instant death hazards. Like you can charge through fire, you can charge through enemies, anything. It also allows us to break the barriers we've seen limiting our movement throughout L299, so now we can actively head towards where the boss fight is on the map. It uses somewhere about 10% of your SP per use, but you can chain them together. With that said, if you want to make the most of your SP while you're doing so, you have to tap the button rhythmically, not just mash it, so you need to be like bop, 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 rather than just like bop, 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 bop. You're gonna see me using this a lot through the LP, and something that you should actively take advantage of with it. If you use it from a standstill, you'll always go forward a certain set amount, so if you use that in mid-air, you can get yourself through narrow passageways that might be surrounded in hazards, without having to worry about controlling yourself as actively in those scenarios. In the case, say you're a little too nervous about edging yourself too close to a spike or something like that. Take advantage of that where and when you can. With that said, we are now coming up on one of my favorite bosses in the game. This one's really fun to fight. There's the boss mutant. I'll finish this right here. Eve, you're awake? Yeah, my energy supply seems to have stabilized. Wait, a mutant? I'll analyze it right away. You just woke up, so take it a bit easy, okay? I'm fine, really. I've already caused you so much trouble. I want to fight together with you. Alright, I'll be counting on your support. Let's do this. Bring it on! With that said, easily stupidest name for a boss in the game. This is Defend Them All. Defend Them All has two notable attack cycles where it actively will rotate what type of platforms you have to deal with here. You'll have to do enough damage to destroy that barrier first. Got it. I'm sure I can get through it with the Burn Spark. This thing's gonna try to stop me. I have to avoid its attacks and be careful not to shut down. Every boss fight has Eve dialogue like that, I just don't always show it off because I often forget to. The first one, we need to climb up to get to Defend It All's core and then attack its head. With that said, you might notice it's trying to throw the active fists at you. You can either shoot them away or Burn Spark into them to eventually just knock them out. You need to mash fire like nothing else into the head. This is actually a place where the auto cluster can come in handy if you fire directly upwards into it, because it'll probably get a little more DPS in, but I still prefer the mash firing of the G Crusher. The second attack type isn't so much using its hands, it'll generate this particular pattern of platforms and then fire missile volleys up in the air, which will crash downwards onto you. If you stand directly in the middle, there's only like 1 or 2 missiles that have a chance of hitting you though, so I'd recommend just taking the shots periodically. After about 80% of its health, you do stun it like this for a few seconds, and if you can take advantage of it, you can actively kill before it gets back up, and once it gets back up, it just repeats the same attack patterns. At that point, it's just sort of a gimme though. And here's our dimensional access key. Now we can access Area E. Is this a dimensional tunnel access key? I guess that mutant had it. Hey, Jason, it seems like a lot happened while I was sleeping. Sorry I couldn't help you. Don't worry about it. We got the access key, no problem. And Sophia's energy production is better than ever. You've got nothing to apologize for. Jason. Alright, let's make our way to the tunnel. And now we're good to backtrack out of here, but we're not going to be cutting this out because for one thing, there's a new cavern along the way, but also there's shortcuts you can now use using the Burn Spark, and I might as well show those off. Along the way, though, we might as well talk about one portion of the Burn Spark I haven't talked about yet, its damage output. There are 2 ways the Burn Spark can actively damage enemies. One of them is the obvious, it's just directly dashing into enemies. That does just under 2 times the G Crusher shot's damage, so that can be pretty useful against smaller enemies. But if you noticeably use it on the ground, you do leave a trail of fire behind, and that apparently does about 1/5 the Crusher Shot's damage. That's not very useful in the long run, but there's some points where that can probably come into handy, so keep that in mind. This cavern's kind of funny, though, because the little termite enemies we technically saw last part that I didn't really talk about, you can very easily just blast counter around them in a lot of cases and use them to take care of a lot of the wires around here. These wires, they do take several shots to break, unless you're using a fire charge shot, in which case you just completely melt through them. And all this for another planetoid map here in Area C. It's a little hard to notice at first, but there is a little breakable wall there you can hit a grenade with to just get back to the entrance. Breakable walls are pretty common in this game's cavern. Some of them aren't marked. The important thing is sometimes you can only break them from one side. I think Blaster Master 01 probably did more of those in the long run, and that's just because Blaster Master Original did a little more with those from memory. 02 usually just has those as a one-way shortcut back to an exit, if they have them at all. Now, I'm going to just warn you outright. If you're playing along, and especially if it's your first playthrough, you're coming up on a part that can cause a lot of frustration if you're going to all the planetoids as soon as you unlock them. But unfortunately, unlike some planetoids, we're coming back maybe with more health down the line, or other sub-weapons can make things a little easier. There's no real way to make this upcoming planetoid easier. It's just gonna be a matter of trial, error, and trying again. And it's easily one of my sourest notes on the game is how some planetoids just are always going to be annoying. I think this is where I died the most on my first playthrough. But also, there's some important lore with Eve right now. My analysis found the ship's designation, Immigration Ship L229. It looks like it departed 150 years ago from the planet Sophia. Your home planet. We might be finally getting close to our destination. But the passengers aboard this ship, they had set out for a new world. Where could they have been going? There had to have been an incredible number of passengers aboard. To think they all fell prey to the mutants. Those bastards. Okay, sorry, L229. I've been saying L299, I think, for the past video and a half. Oh no. Admittedly, between sad notes like that and the more technological nature, this does remind me of some of the mid-game areas of Blaster Master 1 and 01 more than any other part of the game. And in that regard, I guess it's a little nostalgic, but we're done here by and large. We'll need to come back here for one thing down the line, but we don't need to actually enter for a while. But here we go. Planetoid C2, I'd argue, is the hardest planetoid to get the singular item on in the game. Because a lot of the other areas, if you die, it's a very short trek back, and it's not super punishing. But a single mistake on this planet will cost you your life, and you respawn all the way back here. Because it's a Jason-only section, you can't use Sophia here, but it all revolves around pressing switches and then jumping off and catching onto other ladders. In this first little section, you have a little tutorial where you have to figure out the control of it, and you fall into water so it's not punishing. After this, though, we have about, 8, 9, 10 ladders in a row we have to do this on. 4 bits of advice if you're playing along. On lower ceiling areas, jump lower on the ladder. When there's more space between the ladders, jump higher on the ladder so you can fall a little further. Be patient because of the fire here, but also don't hold the up button to get onto the ladders. You want to tap the button as soon as you intersect with it. Any sooner or later, and you're going to miss and just fall flat on your face and die. I was here for so long my first playthrough, just getting frustrated. This section sucks. I greatly dislike it. Thankfully, the middle of it really is the hardest, because while we have a few more here, you might notice there's even some water coming up, so you have a moment of, okay, I can just save myself one last jump, and then grab that HP up. You do need to backtrack out, but the backtrack out's a lot safer, because for one thing, they lower both of those ladders so you can get that health if you need it for some reason. But we can just jump from this ladder over to that safe space and then walk along the entire bottom floor here. I think the main reason this planetoid sucks so much is that it's just a lot of precision out of nowhere relatively early in the game, and at a point where I don't think any other side-scrolling out-of-tank Jason section in the game gets to be this precise and punishing for your precision in the game. Because while there's some harder out-of-tank stuff later on, obviously, nothing gets to be this much, oh, you messed up once, die and do it all over again. I do not like this planetoid, and that's just pretty much a universal thing. But we're done here, so we can now move on. So what's kind of neat is that you actively have a choice on where to go next in the game. The game heavily wants you to go over to Area E, hence why we got that dimensional access key in there. But we can backtrack now to Area A and use a different tunnel over there to go to another portion a little earlier than you're sort of meant to, but they still allow you to. This is Area D, if you're wondering why we got straight from C to E. And we immediately have some planetoids we can see over here, so let's check them out. Why can't I move? Oh! As soon as we entered the new sector of space, we came under attack by an unknown spacecraft. We managed to avoid a direct hit, but GAIA-SOPHIA was forced to make an emergency landing on a nearby planetoid. No way. Is that... It's now time for one of my favorite fights in the game. This one's really fun. Is that another metal attacker? What do you think you're doing? Searching databanks. Found it. Nora MA-07 Garuda. So it is an MA. Why would you attack a fellow MA pilot?
Ah, your tool is breaking down. Is that right?
Huh?
Strange one, aren't you? Clinging to a busted support droid like that.
How dare you? Don't talk about Eve like that!
What a sentimental creature. You don't know when to throw things away, do you? In that case, I'll smash it all. You, that tool, and your vehicle.
What? There's something wrong with him. The fight against Garuda is a massive pattern recognition that's just really fun. And you can tell what attack they're going to do before they even do it, because they start off by flying into the background and doing this first pattern, but then they do another pattern. The second pattern always dictates what attack they're going to do and which direction they're going to come from when they do it. For instance, a flight path across the top of the screen means they're going to fly the opposite direction, doing the same on our plane, firing homing lasers you can dodge by just moving straight left or right. Low flight pattern that just is a straight line means they're going to charge you twice from opposing directions, which leaves them very open to attack with the G-Crusher. Doing a flight path that starts straight but then goes diagonal means they're going to spawn all these bits that will eventually shoot bullets at you and have their own shields. While a flight pattern through the middle of the screen that's mostly straight but has a little diagonal bit means Garuda's going to fly in diagonally and try to shoot directly at you a couple different times. In general, the Hexa missiles is pretty good for this fight, but notably, every single one of Garuda's attacks has a direct counter in your arsenal. For instance, the diagonal shots can be shot down by the auto cluster. The charge against the ground can be interrupted by an ability we're going to get in the main planet of Area E, so in that regard, you might want to wait to go there first. The homing lasers can be taken out with the impact wave, while the bits can be very easily taken out with the multi-lock of the Hexa missiles. I believe doing all of those will get you an achievement and set a flag for something in a later boss fight.
Damn it! Move, Garuda! You always... at the worst times.
He stopped. Now's our chance to get away. Hold on, Jason. I can access Garuda's OS. Collecting data now. Planetoid map G1! This is...
You're hacking me? So that busted doll can still... Stop, right now!
I've been cut off. Eve, we're getting out of here. Okay. We lost him. What the hell was his problem? Sorry, Jason. I thought I could find the reason he attacked us in Garuda's OS, but... all I could get was this map data. It appears to be a map of a planetoid in Area G. Maybe that's where his base is located? Area G is right next to Sophia's sector. Good work, Eve. This map data will definitely come in handy. Now, notably, that is an Area G planetoid map, and we're in Area D, so we're not going to be able to use that for a pretty hot minute, honestly. But there's still some planetoids here in Area D we can access, so let's go ahead and do that. I recommend doing this right now, honestly, because the techniques you might get here might prove useful in the planet in Area E But again, because one of Garuda's attacks is directly countered by an item for Sophia, we're gonna get in Area E. Whichever one you do first is going to make the second one you do easier. Which I like because, as much as I like Blaster Master 1 and Blaster Master 0-1, I think because of their more linear level design, because you always go through that in the same order, it kind of falls apart despite the very Metroid-like connected areas. In the way I like to play Metroids, where I like to have that level of wandering or slight route choices to kind of change up how I play the game sometimes, as long as they don't get carried away with the amount of times you can do that, which is the main reason Hollow Knight does not vibe with me, honestly, because I like the amount of route choices, but it's a little overwhelming in that game specifically. What does make this area kind of interesting, though, is that outside of the fight with Garuda for that planetoid map, I believe every planetoid here in Area D itself is optional. So you can just ignore this area, barring that Garuda fight, and head on to the next plot thing, be it Area E or anything else, in case you went to Area E first. But 100% run on top of everything else just means it's probably worth it to explore here anyway. For doing all that, we get the D2 planetoid map, hell yeah. Now, this planetoid, I actually went through it in an order I don't recommend. I recommend you go to the bottom right of this planetoid first, because the pickup that's over there will help you a lot in the other two, I find. Although this is kind of an interesting section over here. This is one of the few enemy rush rooms you have to do as side-scrolling, standalone Jason. And it's only like 1 or 2 enemies. We got these giant, like, bug tanks for the shield. The shields can be knocked away with enough fire from either the G-Crusher or Jason's blaster rifle. But if you want to make this fight super easy, just stick in the water, because once you're in the water, you actively can't be touched. For doing that, we get our first SP up. Now, of course, back in the first game, the SP gauge was an active, like, bar per bar gauge, just like our HP is. But since this is a percentage-based bar, they actually make it so that every SP up raises your SP by 20%. This is notably why whenever you're in shutdown mode, a maxed fall will recover 200% SP because that's the maximum SP you can have in the game, period. I am speeding this fight up though because this is the Octobibby, which is just a more powerful version of the Hexabibby we fought back in part 2. Main difference-wise, it spawns 2 larvae from its eggs at a faster rate, and it spawns 8 mutants that home in on you instead of 6. Hexa missiles are really good there because they can focus in on either the ads or the main target, but ultimately just aiming upwards and spam firing also goes a long way, just like with the Hexabibby fight. And something I actually forgot to mention, the Hexa and Octobibbys are actually upgraded enemies from Blaster Master 01. The Bibbies themselves were little, like, bug enemies that just floated around in certain levels with water and all that. Now, I'm going to D2 first. If you're playing this for the first time, I actually recommend you go to D3 first, because then you'll be more prepared for what's here in D2. With that said, D2 has easily one of the funniest pickups in the game, because you may have noticed there's 2 pickups here, and one of them is an HP up, and it's right there. It's just in your pathway. I don't know why, I always find it funny when games do this. At least past, like, the first pickup like that they do. Like, sometimes Metroid will just put an energy tank directly in your pathway, and I find that funny after, like, the first or second energy tank, because it's like, why? Either that means you want me to be healed up for something, or you're just thinking there's a marathon ahead of me, and I'm scared for either. It's boss time. Oh, you again.
I finally found you. I won't let you escape this time.
Is that Garuda's pilot? Huh? That choker on his chest. Is that the same as Eve's?
Too bad you're alone. I wanted to dispose of you alongside your malfunctioning doll.
Don't you dare insult Eve.
Give it up. That doll will be completely broken soon enough. If I destroy you first, you won't have to suffer that.
The fight against the Nomad Berserker, Leibniz, is sort of your Virgil fight, so to speak. What's notable about this fight is that Leibniz has no distinct weakness, either to gun levels or sub-weapons or elements. They are instead weak to your basic blast counter, particularly when they do their own little evasive dash around that counters with a physical whip attack. because they are very easy to be stunned with that, and then they're just really open for damage. Otherwise, he's got a spike wheel that if you dodge, he tries to bounce into you once or twice, that I think if you try to use the shield gun level on, you will actively absorb, and it's a pretty good amount of counterpoints you get from that. And then there's that attack he just did. When this happens, any normal shots you hit him with will be deflected and rotate around him for a few seconds before just being sent directly into you. There is a counter you can do when the barrier goes down if you do that, which can be usable to take out some HP pretty quickly, but I don't recommend doing it, if only because that's a little too aggressive for my tastes even.
So this is it. What's wrong? Hurry it up. Finish me off, I'm ready.
I'm not the same as you. I have no intention of killing you.
That's right. You're absolutely correct. We're utterly different, you and I. I have nothing in common with someone who zealously clings to some busted-up doll.
Leibniz, you...
It's better to throw it away. It'll break anyway.
His words don't seem meant for me. I wonder who he's talking to. Fade to black. And he's gone. But in his place is the Vector Reflector, which is that same projectile shield he used during the fight. Notably, this isn't a normal sub-weapon. This is instead a different type of blast counter. It'll create a field around Jason that will reflect enemy projectiles back in the opposite direction, usually along the same trajectory they were sent at you at. The closer they are when the shield's deployed, the stronger they'll be when reflected. It's a little bit different, and it is noticeably, I think, the most expensive counter in the game. But damage-wise, it can do upwards of over double the G-Blaster's base damage. I don't use it too much because I prefer the basic counter on the whole, but there are certain rooms where this is incredibly effective. In fact, by and large, the entirety of Planetoid D3 is one such area because of how many projectile-based enemies there are. Or you can just do a little bit of a tango around the room and just be absurdly silly with it. In case I forgot to mention it, in the case you actively use a blast counter, namely the first one, and there's another blast counter immediately available, you can do that and it won't cost any counterpoints at all. Which is why that room was as silly looking as it was. The main reason I recommended coming to this planetoid first, though, if you're playing through the game on a first run, is because you can get an extra HP just for the Leibniz fight in the case you need it. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 6, now that our duties here in Area D are by and large concluded, we're finally gonna head on over to Area E. See you guys then.